Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to the Bring the Juice podcast here on the Flash Jordan Sports channel. Um, so this initial episode of the Bring the Juice podcast is just going to be just a little bit of an introduction, kind of telling you how I've changed up my style a little bit. If you go back and look at my channel, I have a few new videos that were just projects at my school that I uploaded, but a majority of my videos have been I've named them the Jordan and Dad Show. It was when me and my dad would, during the college football season, we would predict the games for the upcoming weekend, and then that was basically it. But the issue with that is I went through 2 seasons of that, did pretty much every week of the 2016 and 17 college football seasons, and eventually, about 3 weeks into the 2018 season, I got so burnt out on it. Believe it or not, those were taking so long to record and edit, and I just didn't want to keep doing that anymore. It was taking up way too much of my time, a lot longer than it should have. Now I've invented a way, or haven't invented it, but I've found a way to condense it a little bit, and doing the podcast is one of those ways to do that. Now, the Jordan and Dad Show will be coming back. I'll get into that a little bit later, but so that's basically why I've started to do the podcast. It's just an easier way, just to get myself out there without doing all this painstaking editing. So if this is by chance not the first time you've watched any of my stuff, I used to be Flash Jordan College Football, or Flash Jordan CFB, but anyone with half a brain would know that that's Flash Jordan College Football if they watch any of my videos. And that's mainly because, again, college football will be the main topic on this channel, but I do love all sports, and there were times in these last few years where I've been like, man, I wish I could talk about this stuff because I was only ever known as a college football channel. So now that I've rebranded as Flash Jordan Sports, I can basically talk about whatever sports I want. But obviously, college football is my favorite sport, and it will be the main topic of conversation. So with all that being said, let's get into the podcast. A little bit about myself first. I am still in high school. If you go watch any of my last few videos, you'll be able to figure out I was pretty young then. I started the Flash Jordan College Football channel when I was like 14. This will be the fourth year, technically the fourth, or we'll call it the fourth season of the Jordan Dad Show. So I am getting up there a little bit. But I am still in high school. But so why should you listen to me though? Why would you listen to a dumb high school kid over someone else? Well, I think a lot of times when people who want to make sports podcasts and they want to talk about any certain sport, they feel like they have to they feel like they have to act like they're on CBS, or are on like this big network, and they're not really as authentic as maybe they should be. I like to, when I talk about sports, I like to be kind of just lighthearted, make a joke here and there, kind of just, be relatable and not try to put on this fake face, someone I'm not really. That's kind of what I was doing with the Jordan Dad Show. Obviously, I was a lot younger then, so it was a lot worse, but I want to be just as brutally honest as I can and have as much fun doing it as possible. I want to add a little bit of my spice. And another thing I'm going to do is I'm going to have guests on too. We'll get into a little bit of that later, but having them on there as well, I think is going to help a lot with this podcast performance. Another reason is that sports are my life. I believe I watch enough sports to where my opinions are valid, no matter what sport it is. Maybe hockey, like soccer, tennis, maybe those sports, maybe a little bit less. But the main American sports, the basketball, football, baseball, maybe even a little bit hockey here as the Stanley Cup Finals going on right now. But I believe I watch enough to where all my opinions are valid, or all my takes are valid and whatnot. So that's another reason why I think the Bring the Juice podcast is going to be really good. Another reason is that sports are my life. I believe I watch enough sports to where my opinions are valid, no matter what sport it is. Maybe hockey, like soccer, tennis, maybe those sports, maybe a little bit less. But the main American sports, the basketball, football, baseball, maybe even a little bit hockey here as the Stanley Cup Finals going on right now. But I believe I watch enough to where all my opinions are valid or all my takes are valid and whatnot. So that's another reason why I think the Bring the Juice podcast is going to be really good. And ultimately, down the road, my life goal, my dream job is to have either my own show or be some sort of broadcaster, maybe play-by-play announcer or whatever, for any of my three favorite sports, basketball, baseball, or football. Um, and I think that motivation, that's kind of why I'm doing this. I want to at least maybe get a little bit of experience, talking to other people when I have guests on. This is just to keep my feet in the water and just really develop my own style to the point to where I could be maybe even recognizable. So that's a little bit about me and who I want to be as someone who has a podcast. But there are a few things I'll probably need to get out of the way before I start the first episode of this show. Obviously, this is kind of just an introductory episode. I'm going to call it episode 0. There are a few things I should probably get out of the way, though. I do have favorite teams. I'm not one of those people who just loves all sports and doesn't care who wins. No, I definitely care who wins. Um, in a few sports. Major League Baseball, I'm a Chicago Cubs fan, and you're going to notice a trend with all my favorite professional sports teams. I'm a Chicago Cubs, Bears, Bulls, and Blackhawks fan. Starting with the Cubs, been a Cubs fan pretty much my whole life. I went to my first ever game in 2009. I was 7 years old, actually. I had cried to my parents and grandparents the years before and not being able to go. The Cubs are right during the summer. They're pretty much all I pay attention to when it comes to sports. After the NBA finals are done, the Cubs are pretty much the only team on for a couple months, and so what's funny is it's the only team that everyone in my family agrees upon for the most part. On my father's side, pretty much everyone's a Cubs fan, um, and so that's where I get the Cubs stuff from. In the NFL, I'm a Chicago Bears fan. Now, the story of how I became a Bears fan is a little bit. I wasn't just someone who just said, "Okay, I'm going to be an all Chicago fan, like all Chicago teams." Now, my journey with each of these teams is a little bit different. With the Bears, it's kind of funny because influence and how these influences ended up morphing me into these fans was influence was basically how I became fans of these teams. Now, the Bears are a little bit different. My grandparents on one side of the family influenced me to actually be Colts fans. My grandpa is a huge Indianapolis Colts fan, and I was a huge Peyton Manning fan for a couple of years early on in my life, maybe 6 or 7 years old. But I think what it was when I was about 8 or 9, I started playing Madden a lot. Started to get into sports video games a little bit more. And because the Bears were the first team I like to choose always, because they're first alphabetically, I always played with them. And I fell in love with throwing the ball deep to Devin Hester. On the older consoles, obviously, they're a little bit more cheesy. And Devin Hester had 99 speed. That's basically how I became a Bears fan. Just that oversaturation of just playing with them again and again. I kind of lost the love for the Colts. I still like the Colts. I still, my grandpa likes the Colts, so I obviously have a little bit of soft spot for him. But the Bears are my number one NFL team. Don't ever plan on changing that, obviously. So if you saw the 2018 season, the sky is the limit for the Bears right now. So that's how I became a Bears fan. That is my NFL team. So any biases in baseball and football professionally are going to be with the Cubs and the Bears. Again, I'm also a Chicago Bulls fan. With the Bulls, it kind of has to do a little bit with the video games. I played this game. I highly doubt anyone knows anything about this game. It was a game on the PS2 called NBA 09 The Inside. And again, it has to do with alphabetically. The Bulls were the first team. This would have been Derrick Rose. I think it is his first or second year. And I would always just play with the Bulls. Derrick Rose was the best player on that team. No one in my family or really anyone around me paid too much attention to the NBA at the time. So it wasn't people at all, which is why I became a Bulls fan. But in the last few years, haven't been the greatest. But obviously, the D Rose thing. I don't want to get into it. Those were tough times. But I do love the Bulls. The sky, we can only get better from where we've been. Huge Zach LaVine fan, and I hate LeBron too. Let me get that out of the way too. I despise LeBron James. I'll get into more of my negative biases here in a minute, but yeah, I hate LeBron James, and I'll get into why in a second. Um, in the NHL, I don't pay as much attention to the NHL. The only team I watch in the NHL is the Chicago Blackhawks. Um, and that's really it. I only watch Blackhawks games. I don't even watch playoff hockey, and I've only watched maybe a minute of the Stanley Cup final. So that's why I'm probably not going to talk a lot about it. If I do, it'll probably just be saying, "Hey, congratulations! Well, what this could mean for the years to come." But the Blackhawks are my favorite NHL team, and then this brings into the college team. If you go watch any of my other videos, at some point you'll find me saying I am a huge Ohio State fan. How I'm an Ohio State fan is because of influence from my uncle. My uncle grew up in Ohio, near Columbus, and he used to sit me down in front of the TV, and he would just play Ohio State, Michigan 2006 reruns. And that's pretty much all I knew. Now, my father would tell you differently, but that's pretty much all I knew. I knew the names of the players on the teams on that Ohio State team. I named a salamander after Roy Hall, who was a wide receiver on Ohio State. So that tells you pretty much how I felt about them. Stuck with them. I know 2018 was a roller coaster year. I'm glad with the way it ended, even though we didn't make the playoff. We can get into that in a later episode. But Ohio State, if I had to rank my favorite teams from top to bottom on how like my favorite of my favorites, Ohio State football is probably number one. I don't know what it is. Ohio State football and just college football in general, I'd have to put them number one. I love them more than any sports team on earth, and I also love the basketball team though too. I'm not just a football guy when it comes to Ohio State athletics. Basketball is awesome as well. I first started watching Ohio State basketball with Jared Solinger, and those were great years. Made the Final Four one year, Elite Eight, Sweet 16. We had a great run at the beginning there with Jared Solinger, Thad Matta. I do remember watching a few games with Evan Turner in them too. So he was a big impact too. Once I got into football, basketball kind of just fell into my hands. So Ohio State football and basketball, both teams are going to be in the top 10 at some point next year, at least from what I'm hearing, seeing the preseason polls for basketball. But so those are going to be my biases, at least for on the positive scale. Now we need to get into my biases on the negative scale. In Major League Baseball, I obviously hate the St. Louis Cardinals, being a Cubs fan. And I also hate a lot of the big market teams. I hate the Dodgers. I won't say hate. I hate the Cardinals. Not a huge fan of the Dodgers, Yankees, Mets. I'm okay with the Angels. I love Mike Trout, but I'm not a huge fan of the big market baseball teams. And that kind of goes for pretty much every sport. Not a huge fan of the Los Angeles, New York teams in any sport. Obviously, in the NFL, I hate the Packers. I do at least acknowledge that Aaron Rodgers is one of the greatest throwers of the football of all time. But just like the Packers very much. Don't like the Patriots at all, really. Again, I do respect the dynasty that they've built, but I'm going to continue to root against them forever. The only NBA team I don't like is any team that LeBron James is on. I want to see them lose so bad because being a Bulls fan, I hate that people say that he's better. That can be a topic for a whole other video. I could get into it, but that's not what this video is for. And in the NHL, again, I don't pay too much attention to the rest of the league. But if I had to say a few teams that I'm not on their liking side, St. Louis Blues, who are in the finals now, Detroit Red Wings, and the Pittsburgh Penguins. The only reason that I don't like the Pittsburgh Penguins is because randomly I was watching the 2010 Olympic hockey final when Sidney Crosby scored the goal. And since Sidney Crosby's on the Penguins, I don't know why, but I just don't like the Penguins, I guess. But so those, and then obviously in college football, not a huge Alabama fan. Don't like the fact that they're up there every year. Who am I want to talk? Ohio State's pretty much the best team in the Big Ten every year. But and then obviously that team up north, or I'll call them Michigan on the show. I'm not going to say that team up north. I'm not that obnoxious of a fan. Not a huge Michigan State fan in either sport. Again, I respect, especially in basketball, the program that they've built. Not a huge Michigan State fan, though. Penn State football, not really on my side either. More Michigan basketball. Actually, I hate Michigan basketball more than football right now because since I've started watching in football, they really haven't beaten us. And in basketball, it's kind of been back and forth, and not a huge fan of their basketball team. Kind of in college basketball, too, I'm not a huge fan of the Kansases, Kentuckys, and the Dukes. Um, I just like to see them lose. It's not that I don't like them, but I like to see them lose. I'm sure other people in college like to see Ohio State football lose too, but that's the main gist of it. So this is gonna be a pretty quick episode compared to the ones that would follow. The last aspect of this show that I'm gonna get into, pretty simple, is the fact that I'm gonna have some varying guests on the show. Probably not a lot at the start, but I want to get something out of the way here. My dad has his own channel, and lately he has exploded because of a video he put out the other day on the Albert Almora, when Albert Almora for the Chicago Cubs hit a little girl in the face with a line drive. His video has over 400,000 views right now. He exploded. He gained a couple hundred subscribers. That is C Crew Sports. Obviously, if you have half a brain and go back, watch any of my videos, and then watch his videos, you'll know that obviously we have some sort of relationship. Obviously, that is my dad. Okay. So I'm going to do a lot of collaborating with him, obviously, because he's already started to grow a little bit of a fan base. I'm obviously going to try and loot off him. All right, why wouldn't you? Okay. I'm just trying to grow this channel as much as possible. And then from that, it'll probably kind of just be like a boost into where I could start improving my own subscriber count and, viewership on my own. But he'll be my main guest on a lot of the shows. Like I said, the Jordan and Dad show will be coming back for the college football season. Very excited for football to come back once the NBA finals end. I love baseball, but the only issue is just like there are so many games. And after a while, I just start watching the Cubs. I don't really care about anywhere else. But I'll have some of my friends who I know or would at least be viable for a sports show, actually know what they're talking about. I don't want to get people on here who are just going to say like, oh, I hate this team because they did this. No, I want people who actually can analyze and actually, interpret what is going on in a certain game. Like, for example, if, I want people on who are going to say, well, the Warriors, they use the pick and roll a lot. And I think, or they move around. I'm not saying that the Warriors do that. I'm like, that's just a random thing. Steph Curry's always moving without the ball. That's why they're really good. I want people like that. I don't want people just being like, I hate the Golden State Warriors, go Raptors. And I'll be like, why? And they're just like, I don't know, I just want them to win. No, I don't want people like that. So that's basically the main gist. This was episode 0, technically, of the Bring the Juice podcast. Thank you all for watching. I will see you in a couple days here. This will be tentatively. I'm going to start this on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays podcast. As the college football season just gets closer, I'll update you on the Jordan Dad Show episodes when they come out. Thank you all for listening or watching, and I will see you guys next time.